I started salting my food and actually taking salt tablets before working out. I did a podcast with Stan Efferding, who did the vertical diet and IFBB Pro, and he recommended as part of that. I did his workout program for like 4 weeks before doing the podcast, and I would take like 500 milligrams or something of salt tablets before and post workout. And I tell you what, that's some of the best I've ever felt. And now even to this day, pre-workout, I'll do a black coffee and I'll add, maybe like a teaspoon of salt straight into that. So why is that making me feel so much better as opposed to almost any other pre-workout that I've taken in my life?
So the problem with exercise performance is, particularly vigorous exercise performance, is you have a drop in blood volume of about 8 to 10% within just 5 to 15 minutes, depending on how vigorous you're going. So if you're going pretty much all out, your blood volume is going to drop tremendously in about just 3 minutes. Okay, because blood is being pushed towards working muscle. So now the blood feeding the heart is down. So if you can boost blood volume prior to exercise, then you're going to get ahead of the main problem that inhibits vigorous exercise performance. And again, that's that plasma volume depletion, because the blood is flowing to working muscle and now your heart isn't getting enough blood flow. And basically the cardiac output goes down. So salt solutions, if you consume these salt solutions, typically they got to be about as salty as blood. So that's about 200 milligrams of sodium per liter. You start consuming those about an hour and a half prior to performance, and you slowly consume them over 30 to 60 minutes. And then that slow infusion of salt and water dramatically boosts blood volume. And so now you can cool your body off better because you have better blood flow. And how we dissipate heat is pushing blood to the skin. So as you start working out longer and longer, your core body temperature starts going up and up. And now blood isn't just being pushed to a working muscle, it's got to go dissipate. So now you have blood being basically shunted to two different places. And the heart's like, what the heck? All my blood volume is down now. And that dramatically increases oxygen demand on the heart. Heart rate goes up. And if you don't have enough blood volume and water to cool the body off, the increase in core body temperature dramatically rises. So the clinical studies that give salt preloads with water have shown in the heat, if you vigorously exercise, you can go over 20 minutes longer. So people who are vigorously exercising on a treadmill or cycling, they typically stop at about 40 minutes. But if you give them a salt solution, they can go over 60 minutes. Wow. So that's tremendously beneficial. And if you look at any other pre-supplement like beta-alanine or beetroot juice, that only gives you about 1 minute longer of exercise. We're talking about 20 minutes longer with salt and water. So it's the best pre-workout you could ever do, and that's the reason why.
Okay, so what would that look like? As you said, 3,200 milligrams in water, and doing it slowly obviously makes a lot of sense for absorption and not to get a large spike there. So is that a tablespoon, a couple tablespoons, if somebody was to just eat your average salt?
So that's about a teaspoon and a half
Okay.
in about a liter of fluid.
Okay. And then during the workout, is it beneficial to have a little bit of salt in your water or whatever beverage you're having during the workout as well?
So if we're talking about like acutely boosting performance, then doing the preload prior is the way to go, because when you vigorously exercise, gastric emptying is reduced. So you don't really want to consume a lot of fluid during vigorous exercise because it'll sit in the stomach, you'll bloat, and it can reduce performance.
Okay.
So it's about really getting the salt and the water into the blood prior, so it's not sitting in the stomach, right? But if you're talking about not acutely boosting performance, like if you're training for something down the road, what's the best way to improve performance? That's actually becoming dehydrated acclimated, because the adaptations to dehydration dramatically improve performance later on. So how do you become dehydrated acclimated? You just drink to thirst. So whenever you're thirsty, you take a sip of water, and that's about it, because your thirst signals keep you actually dehydrated during exercise, because you typically only consume 25 to 50% of the water that you lose when you're exercising. Your thirst isn't that great, but that's good in the long run, because as you dehydrate, you become acclimated to it. Just very, very similarly to why when you exercise multiple times, right, you become stronger and better afterwards.
Right.
So I tell people when they're training, just drink when you're thirsty. If your mouth is dry, just drink a little bit of water, just a couple sips, and then keep going. And then you, over the weeks, how your body fights that dehydration is it will slowly boost baseline blood volume. Your blood volume actually gets bigger by doing that because it's fighting the dehydration. That's how your body adapts to the dehydration. So then you certainly want to rehydrate afterwards. So you come into training fully hydrated. You mildly dehydrate, which is a drop in weight of about 1.5 to 2.5%. So you weigh yourself before training and then after training.
Yeah.
And then you simply rehydrate with a salt solution that is as salty as sweat, which is typically about 1/2 teaspoon of salt per liter of fluid loss.
Okay.
And then before performance, if you're not doing a salt preload with water, like before an event or before competition, you're going to be at a dramatically reduced advantage. So you always want to do the salt preloads when you have definitely competition day, or if you have low energy, or if you're going to have a really grueling training session, you should probably do a salt preload. But besides that, it's dehydration, acclimation all the way.
Okay, I'm wondering if some people, when they carb load, right? If when they're carb loading, if part of that meal just being salty anyways is part of why they have their performance benefits, right? Because a lot of times when these athletes are doing this a couple hours before, like, and that, we've looked at the anabolic window, and then the amino acids are still available, even if you're having pre or post, doesn't seem to necessarily matter unless you're like maybe a high level athlete. But I wonder if there's something with that, if it's the sodium and not necessarily the carbohydrates.
It could very well be if the carb loading is bringing salt, and it's bringing a fairly decent amount of salt, then it could be.
Yeah.
But we do know that, particularly for vigorous exercise, right, that reducing the loss of muscle glycogen and replenishing that is going to improve performance. So basically, there's these sort of high molecular weight starches like Vitargo or glycofuse, which are much better than things like maltodextrin or dextrose or your random sugars, because they actually do absorb faster, they reduce bloating, and they've been basically put head to head against other types of carb sources, and they seem to be they do improve performance and reduce muscle glycogen loss and recovery better. But if I were to do just like a simple carb load, I would just do like maple syrup or orange juice. Like 30, 45 minutes prior to training.